The message told Maya Brooks to take the East Road. But Vincent Hale knew that road had been closed for 6 years. Rain hammered the slate roof of Hale Manor and turned the long driveway into a silver river as Maya hurried from the service entrance with a sealed leather envelope pressed beneath her coat. She had received the order at 11:47 that night from a number saved under Vincent's name. The message said the envelope had to reach the Old Lake warehouse before midnight, and it warned her not to involve the security staff. Maya disliked the secrecy, but she had worked at the manor for 3 years, and Vincent was known for giving instructions without explanation. She crossed the courtyard toward the black service sedan while thunder rolled over Lake Michigan. At the same moment, Vincent stepped from the West Library after ending a tense conference call. Through the rain-streaked window, he saw the sedan's rear light flicker once and go dark. Then he noticed Maya opening the driver's door. He reached the portico before she started the engine. His charcoal suit was soaked within seconds, and his voice cut through the storm. "Do not move that car." Maya froze with one hand on the wheel. Vincent rarely raised his voice, but the alarm in his gray eyes was different from anger. He took the phone she held out and read the message twice. "I did not send this," he said. Maya's stomach tightened. Vincent looked past her toward the gate, where the chain that normally blocked the East Road had been removed. He ordered the gatehouse officer to close both entrances and call the manor's mechanic. No one was permitted to leave, but Vincent also made it clear that Maya was not a suspect. He guided her beneath the portico, where warm light revealed rainwater running from her navy uniform and cream apron. The envelope carried Vincent's embossed seal, yet the wax was slightly darker than the seal used in his office. Inside was a warehouse access badge registered to Maya, a set of unsigned delivery papers, and a handwritten instruction telling her to use the East Road because the main highway was being watched. The mechanic arrived from the staff quarters and examined the sedan beneath the covered carriage bay. Within minutes, he found that the brake fluid reservoir cap had been loosened and the rear warning light disconnected. He did not claim what might have happened, only that the car was unsafe and had been altered recently. Maya stared at the vehicle, then at the road disappearing into the rain. Vincent's expression became still, the way it did when he understood that someone inside his own house had made a move. "This was not a delivery," he said quietly. "It was a trap, and whoever built it expected you to disappear before morning." Vincent moved the investigation to the small security lodge near the front gate because it had an independent power line and a camera system separate from the manor network. Maya sat beside a space heater with a wool blanket around her shoulders while Caleb Ross, the security director, copied the message from her phone without changing the original data. Vincent remained standing, his wet jacket folded over a chair, speaking with controlled precision. He ordered Caleb to preserve every access log, camera recording, vehicle maintenance record, and staff schedule from the previous 72 hours. He also called Rachel Kim, an independent forensic accountant who had audited one of his legal companies the year before. He did not ask anyone from his inner circle for permission. Maya watched him and understood that his decision was unusual. Men in Vincent's world protected appearances first, but he was protecting evidence. Caleb traced the message to a spoofing service that had copied Vincent's contact name without using his actual telephone. The sender had known Maya's private number, her late shift, and the fact that she sometimes handled sealed household deliveries. The envelope created an even deeper problem. The access badge inside had been issued 4 months earlier under Maya's employee identification, but she had never seen it. According to the computer record, it had opened the Old Lake warehouse twice during the past week. Both entries occurred while Maya had been inside Hale Manor. Mrs. Evelyn Price, the senior housekeeper, confirmed that Maya had served dinner during the first entry and helped inventory linens during the second. Vincent asked Maya to describe everything unusual she had noticed that evening. At first, she mentioned only the false message. Then she remembered Grant Mercer, Vincent's longtime financial advisor, entering the service hallway shortly before 10. Grant had asked whether she was finishing at midnight and whether the storm had changed her transportation plans. The questions had seemed polite at the time. She also recalled seeing a maintenance cart parked beside the private garage. Although no repair was listed on the household board, Vincent did not accuse Grant. He wrote the details on a legal pad and asked Caleb to verify them. Maya appreciated that restraint. Yet another thought troubled her. Earlier that afternoon, she had found a torn shipping label beneath the East Archive shelves. She had placed it in her apron pocket, intending to give it to Mrs. Price. But the night's confusion had pushed it from her mind. She unfolded the damp paper. It showed the name Meridian Transit and a partial invoice number. Vincent recognized the company immediately. Meridian handled documents and equipment for his lakefront redevelopment project, a project Grant had urged him to approve before the end of the week. Rachel arrived just after 2 in the morning. She examined the label, the access badge, and the altered delivery papers, then looked directly at Vincent. "Someone is linking Maya to that warehouse," she said, "and the timing suggests the real target is whatever you are voting on Friday." Outside, the storm continued, but the danger had moved indoors. By sunrise, Hale Manor had become quiet in the unnatural way a house becomes quiet when everyone knows something is wrong, but no one knows whom to trust. Vincent canceled all outside appointments and instructed the household staff to follow their normal routines while Rachel and Caleb worked from the security lodge. He told Maya she could remain in a guest room until the weather cleared. Yet she refused to be hidden. She changed into a dry navy uniform and returned to the breakfast room because disappearing would make the rumor easier to shape. Her calm unsettled several senior employees who had already heard that a false access badge carried her name. Grant Mercer arrived at 8:30 in a dark overcoat, perfectly composed, and expressed concern that Maya had nearly driven an unsafe vehicle. His sympathy sounded polished, but he quickly suggested that the incident might have resulted from a confused employee trying to conceal unauthorized warehouse visits. Vincent asked him how he knew the warehouse was involved. Grant paused only a fraction of a second before saying Caleb had mentioned it by telephone. Caleb, standing near the doorway, said he had made no such call. The room fell silent. Grant recovered by blaming an assistant, then requested a private meeting with Vincent. Vincent declined. "Until the records are preserved. Every discussion will have a witness," he said. The statement changed the balance of the room. Rachel spent the morning comparing the copied access logs with payroll records, kitchen schedules, and exterior camera times. The warehouse entries assigned to Maya had been inserted after the fact. The system showed perfect timestamps, but the entries lacked the normal device handshake produced when a badge touched the reader. Someone with administrator access had created digital shadows without using the physical card. Caleb found a second irregularity in the private garage. A camera covering the service sedan had gone offline for 11 minutes. Yet the outage was not caused by the storm. The camera had been placed in maintenance mode from a terminal inside Grant's accounting office. Grant denied touching the system and claimed several executives knew his password. Maya listened without interrupting, then asked a simple question. Why had an accounting office been granted permission to place security cameras in maintenance mode? No one had an acceptable answer. Vincent looked at Caleb, and Caleb admitted that Grant had requested temporary access during a previous insurance review. The permission had never been removed. That failure belonged to Vincent's system, not only to Grant. Vincent acknowledged it in front of everyone. Later, in the East Archive, Maya showed Rachel where she had found the torn Meridian label. Behind the shelf was a narrow gap containing scraps from several removed labels, each carrying invoice numbers just below $10,000. Maya had studied bookkeeping at community college before family responsibilities forced her to stop. She recognized a familiar pattern: invoices divided into smaller amounts to avoid a higher approval level. Rachel agreed that the pattern deserved examination but warned that suspicion was not proof. Together they cataloged the scraps, photographed the location, and sealed everything in evidence bags. When Vincent entered, Maya handed him the log without ceremony. "Someone expected you to look at me," she said. "They did not expect you to look at the system." The first direct attack on Maya's credibility came before noon. An anonymous email reached every member of the Hale family council, claiming that she had used her position inside the manor to collect financial information for an outside buyer. Attached were photographs of Maya near the East Archive, copies of the false warehouse entries, and a bank deposit of $8,000 into an account bearing her name. Grant called an emergency council meeting and argued that Vincent had become too personally involved to judge the matter. Maya learned about the accusation from Mrs. Price, not from Vincent, and the delay wounded her more than she expected. She found him in the library with Rachel and demanded to see every claim. Vincent handed her the printed file. The bank statement looked convincing until Maya noticed that the listed address was an apartment she had left 4 years earlier. She called the bank's fraud department in Rachel's presence. The account was real, but it had been opened online 3 weeks before using a scanned copy of an expired employee identification form. No money had entered any account Maya controlled. Rachel requested formal records through legal counsel and documented the call. The photographs also failed under scrutiny. They showed Maya carrying archive boxes on dates when Mrs. Price had assigned her to routine cleaning. But the images cropped out the inventory card and the supervisor standing nearby. The evidence had been built from ordinary moments and rearranged into a story. Vincent wanted Maya to remain at the manor under protection until the review ended. She told him that protection without choice could become another kind of prison. She would stay only if she could contact her own attorney, keep copies of evidence concerning her, and speak for herself before the council. Vincent agreed to all 3 conditions. He also placed Grant on administrative leave from the redevelopment vote. Although the council had not yet approved that action, Grant responded by warning that investors would interpret the move as instability. Vincent answered that instability already existed if an employee could be framed with records created inside his own offices. That afternoon, Maya's attorney, Denise Carter, arrived from Chicago. Denise reviewed the procedures and insisted that Maya's employment status remain unchanged while the investigation continued. Vincent signed the agreement immediately. The gesture did not erase the imbalance between them, but it showed that he understood trust could not depend on his private promise. As evening approached, Rachel found a link between the false bank account and Meridian Transit. The online application had been submitted through an internet address assigned to Meridian's warehouse office. Caleb then discovered that Grant's executive assistant, Owen Blake, had visited the warehouse on both nights when Maya's false badge entries appeared. The evidence still did not prove Grant had ordered the trap, but the circle was tightening. Maya looked through the rain at the East Road and realized the plan had required more than one lie. It had required everyone to believe that a maid was easier to accuse than an advisor who had sat beside Vincent for 15 years. The investigation changed direction when Maya recognized a name hidden inside Meridian's invoices. Each shipping bill listed a compliance reviewer identified only by the initials LB, followed by a 6-digit employee code. Maya had seen the code before on an old document belonging to her father, Leonard Brooks. He had worked as a junior accountant for one of the Hale family's legitimate construction companies until his death 9 years earlier. Family members had always told Maya that Leonard resigned after making serious errors, and she had carried the shame of that story without knowing the details. She asked Rachel to compare the code with archived payroll files. The result arrived that evening. The code had belonged to Leonard, but it had been inactive since the week before his death. Someone had continued using his identity to approve safety expenses and transportation invoices for nearly a decade. The discovery shook Maya, yet it also explained why she had been selected. Her employment file contained her relationship to Leonard. If investigators eventually noticed his code, Grant could point to Maya and claim that father and daughter had operated the scheme together. The rain trap was designed to make her appear guilty, frightened, and absent before anyone reviewed the records. Vincent listened as Rachel explained the pattern in the library. For the first time since the investigation began, his composure broke. He remembered Leonard as a quiet man who had once tried to warn Vincent's father about irregular vendor payments. Vincent had been 27 and had accepted the family's explanation that Leonard was unreliable. He had never asked to see the original report. Maya did not raise her voice. "You inherited more than a company," she told him. "You inherited the convenience of not asking who paid for its silence." Vincent did not defend himself. He ordered the old personnel boxes brought from off-site storage and asked Denise to supervise the review. Inside Leonard's file, they found a disciplinary notice signed by Grant and a handwritten appeal that had never reached the board. The appeal identified Meridian Transit as a shell vendor and requested an independent audit. A receipt showed that the original supporting documents had been moved to the old lake warehouse. Grant had spent years hiding transactions beneath Leonard's identity, and the redevelopment vote would transfer the warehouse property to a new company, allowing the remaining records to be destroyed under a routine document disposal schedule. Maya had almost been sent there with an access badge and in signed papers that would place her at the scene. The trap had been personal, but its purpose was financial. Vincent immediately postponed the Friday vote. Several council members objected, warning that the delay could cost millions of dollars. He replied that money built on falsified records was already a loss. Then he made a decision no previous Hale leader had made. He invited an outside law firm, a labor representative, and an independent compliance panel to review the family companies. Grant's influence had grown inside secrecy, so Vincent would remove the secrecy even if it exposed his own failures. Maya understood the cost of that choice, but she did not mistake it for redemption. "Opening the books is the beginning," she said. "What you do after people read them is what matters." Grant's response was not panic but persuasion. Through council allies, he circulated a carefully written statement claiming that Vincent had postponed a major project because of an emotional attachment to an employee. The statement never mentioned Maya's race or position directly, yet it relied on every assumption surrounding both. It suggested she had manipulated Vincent with a story about her father and implied that the independent review was a private favor. Reporters began calling the manor by the next morning. Vincent's advisors urged him to release Maya's personnel record to prove there was nothing improper between them. Maya refused to let her private life become a defense exhibit. Vincent supported her decision and issued only a brief statement confirming the audit, the postponed vote, and the preservation of evidence. He did not present himself as her rescuer. He said the organization had failed to protect an employee and that responsibility rested with its leadership. Inside the manor, the emotional cost was harder to manage. Maya learned that several staff members were afraid their jobs would disappear if the redevelopment collapsed. She gathered them in the service dining room and explained what she could without violating the investigation. She did not ask them to choose her side. She asked them to record unusual instructions, preserve messages, and speak truthfully to independent reviewers. Her steadiness produced the first unexpected witness. Thomas Reed, a night maintenance worker, admitted that Owen Blake had asked him to remove the chain from the East Road and place the service sedan outside. Owen claimed Vincent wanted the route ready for a confidential delivery. Thomas had obeyed because the instruction came with a copied executive authorization. He had not touched the vehicle and had not understood the danger. Denise arranged for him to give a protected statement. Caleb then traced the copied authorization to a printer in Grant's office. Rachel discovered another link. Payments to Meridian had increased every time Grant persuaded the council to reduce internal safety inspections. The scheme was broader than forged invoices. It had redirected money from worker training, vehicle maintenance, and emergency systems into consulting contracts controlled by Grant's associates. No accident was described in the records, but the missing funds had created years of preventable risk. Vincent called Maya to the library that evening. He had drafted a plan to place the legal companies under temporary outside management while the review continued. Doing so would strip him of direct authority and might end his position as head of the family organization. "Grant thinks I will protect the chair," he said. Maya looked at the carved chair at the end of the long table. "Then make the chair useless to him." Vincent signed the temporary governance agreement. The moment was quiet, without applause, but it marked the first time his power became evidence of accountability rather than control. Outside, the rain finally began to weaken. Maya stood near the window, aware that Vincent had saved her from the road, but also aware that she was now helping save many others from a system that had treated safety as an expense and silence as loyalty. The independent panel scheduled its first public session for Friday evening in Hale Manor's ballroom, the same hour the redevelopment vote had originally been planned. Rachel would present the financial reconstruction. Caleb would explain the security manipulation. Denise would represent Maya, and the council would be required to answer questions under recorded procedure. Grant, still represented by counsel, denied every allegation and announced that he would attend. During the 2 days before the session, Maya worked from a temporary office in the East Wing rather than returning to normal household duties. Vincent instructed payroll to preserve her salary and benefits, but all investigative decisions concerning her were routed through Denise to prevent him from controlling her participation. The boundary made their conversations more formal, yet it also made them more honest. Maya helped Rachel organize Leonard's files because she understood his shorthand and could identify the difference between his real initials and the later imitations. She noticed that Leonard always placed a small d after the second initial. while Meridian's approvals did not. A handwriting examiner confirmed the distinction. Caleb recovered a backup from an older gate controller that the conspirators had overlooked. It showed Owen's vehicle entering the warehouse on the 2 nights, tied to Maya's false badge record. More importantly, the backup preserved a remote command from Grant's office that created the badge entries. The evidence now connected the digital manipulation, the false account, and the warehouse access. The final link came from Owen himself. Faced with records and advised by separate counsel, he admitted that Grant had ordered him to spoof Vincent's message, prepare the envelope, and create the false access history. Owen claimed he believed Maya would be frightened into leaving town after being stopped for unauthorized entry. He said Grant never told him the sedan had been altered. That detail pointed to another participant, the contracted mechanic supervisor whose company had received Meridian payments. The independent mechanic who examined the car documented the alteration, and the supervisor's work phone showed a late call from Grant. No one needed to speculate about what the road might have done. The deliberate creation of an unsafe vehicle was enough. On Friday afternoon, Grant attempted one final distraction. A short edited video appeared online showing Vincent placing his code around Maya at the gatehouse during the storm. The clip removed the disabled car and made the moment look intimate. Maya watched it once, then turned off the screen. "He still thinks the story is about whether I deserve your attention," she said. "The story is whether everyone here deserved safety." Vincent agreed. They entered the ballroom separately that evening, not as a secret couple or a dramatic alliance, but as 2 witnesses with different responsibilities. Grant sat at the council table beneath the chandeliers, confident that years of loyalty would outweigh a maid's testimony. Then the doors opened, and employees from the manor, warehouse, construction offices, and transportation division quietly filled the public seats. The people Grant had treated as invisible had come to hear the record. Rachel began with numbers, not accusations. She displayed the sequence of Meridian invoices, the inactive employee code assigned to Leonard Brooks, the duplicated approvals, and the payments routed through consulting companies connected to Grant's associates. Caleb followed with the missing device handshakes, the remote badge entries, the garage camera command, and the preserved gate controller backup. Denise then established the false bank account and the misuse of Maya's expired employment identification. Each fact stood on an independent record. Grant's attorney objected to conclusions, and the panel chair agreed that conclusions would come later. That fairness made the evidence stronger, because no one could claim the session was a performance arranged by Vincent. When Maya spoke, she described the message, the envelope, and the moment Vincent stopped the sedan. She did not exaggerate the danger. She stated that a qualified mechanic had declared the vehicle unsafe. The East Road was closed during severe weather, and the order had instructed her to avoid security. She explained how the accusation against her had been designed from ordinary pieces of her life, her work schedule, her old address, her father's employment, and her access to service areas. "The plan depended on people seeing my uniform before they saw the records," she said. The ballroom remained silent. Grant finally spoke. He blamed Owen, the contractor, outdated permissions, and Leonard's old work. He argued that Vincent had destabilized the organization by opening confidential files. Vincent waited until the panel chair invited his response. He acknowledged every governance failure that had allowed Grant's access to remain unchecked. Then he announced that he had signed away temporary control and would accept the panel's recommendations even if they removed him permanently. The council members who had expected him to defend his throne looked stunned. Vincent's choice did not prove Grant's guilt, but it removed Grant's most useful argument that the inquiry existed to protect Vincent. Owen's recorded statement was then admitted, followed by the mechanic supervisor's payment records and call history. Grant's calm expression finally faded. The panel suspended him and referred the evidence to the appropriate authorities for formal investigation. It also ordered an immediate review of every contract approved under Leonard's identity. No one dragged Grant from the room, and no threat was made. He stood, gathered his papers, and left beside his attorney while employees watched in complete silence. Vincent then turned toward Maya, but he did not offer money, promotion, or gratitude as if those could settle the harm. He apologized publicly for leading a system in which her word required a near disaster before it received equal weight. Maya accepted the apology as a statement of responsibility, not as forgiveness owed. The panel approved temporary worker representation, protected reporting channels, and independent safety control. For the first time, the Hale organization would not investigate itself. As the session ended, thunder sounded far across the lake, softer than it had on the night of the trap. Maya realized that Vincent had saved her at the gate. But the truth had been saved only because both of them allowed other people to verify it. 6 months later, the old lake warehouse no longer belonged to Meridian Transit. Under the independent panel's order, the property had been transferred to a public benefit foundation funded by recovered assets and voluntary contributions from the Hale companies. The unsafe East Road remained closed, but a new access route led to a training center where drivers, hospitality workers, and maintenance crews received paid safety instruction. Maya served as the foundation's operations director after completing the bookkeeping courses she had once abandoned. She accepted the position from the independent board, not from Vincent, and her contract gave her authority no private promise could remove. Leonard's record had been formally corrected. The review found that he had reported the scheme and had been punished for refusing to approve false expenses. His handwritten appeal was framed in Maya's office, not as decoration, but as a reminder that truth needed a system capable of hearing it. Grant's case remained in legal proceedings, and the story did not pretend that accountability arrived in a single evening. Several executives resigned, lost contracts, or entered compliance agreements. Workers recovered training funds and received representation on safety committees. Vincent never returned to absolute control. He remained a major owner of the lawful businesses, but an independent board governed operations, and employee representatives held permanent seats. Some relatives called that outcome the destruction of the Hale legacy. Vincent called it the first honest version of the legacy he was willing to keep. On an October evening, rain began to fall over Lake Michigan while Maya locked the training center after the final class. Vincent waited beneath the entrance awning in a simple gray suit, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. He had come to review a community grant proposal, but the meeting had ended an hour earlier. Maya accepted 1 cup and studied the rain. "You know the main road is open," she said. "I checked twice," he replied. The faint humor between them would have been impossible months before. Their connection had grown slowly through boundaries, difficult conversations, and choices made without demanding reward. Vincent had never again called himself her protector. Maya had never allowed gratitude to become obligation. When the rain strengthened, he opened an umbrella and stepped beside her. He did not place it over her without asking. She moved beneath it by choice, and they walked toward the parking lot at the same pace. Behind them, light filled the warehouse windows where hidden records had once waited to disappear. Ahead, buses carried workers home along a safe road marked with new reflective signs. Maya paused before entering her car and looked back at Vincent. "That night, you trusted what you knew about the road," she said. "After that, you had to learn to trust what you did not know about the people around you." Vincent nodded. "I am still learning." She smiled, not because the past had vanished, but because he finally understood that learning was not weakness. The storm that had begun as a trap had ended by opening every locked door it was meant to protect. And when Maya drove away, Vincent did not watch like a man guarding something he owned. He watched like an equal who knew that the next meeting, the next choice, and whatever future they might build would begin only when she freely returned.